Most people recognize the familiar Thanksgiving legend, a peaceful feast shared by Pilgrims and Native Americans, symbolizing unity, gratitude, and harmony. But the real story is far more complicated. The first Thanksgiving was a brief moment of cooperation set against a backdrop of hardship, uncertainty, and cultural misunderstanding. Today, we're uncovering the deeper story of the Pilgrims, the Wampanoag, and the complicated origins of this iconic American tradition. Who attended the first Thanksgiving? To appreciate what happened in 1621, we need to understand the two groups who came together for that historic gathering. On one side were the Pilgrims, newcomers struggling to survive in a land they barely understood. On the other were the Wampanoag, an indigenous people who had lived in the region for generations, now facing dramatic change as European arrivals increased. The Pilgrims were English separatists fleeing religious persecution. In 1620, they embarked on the Mayflower and spent more than 2 grueling months at sea. Over 100 passengers were packed into tight, dank quarters below deck, enduring sickness, foul conditions, and constant storms. By the time they reached present-day Plymouth, winter was closing in, and many were already weakened. Their first winter was catastrophic. Lacking sufficient shelter and food, the colonists battled freezing weather, disease, and malnutrition. By spring, nearly half of the original group had died. For those who remained, every day was a battle for survival. Yet the Pilgrims were not alone. They had settled in the homeland of the Wampanoag. Early contact between the two groups was cautious and tense. Differences in language, customs, and worldview created deep mistrust. Both sides understood that one wrong move could erupt into conflict neither group was prepared to face. The Wampanoag had cultivated the land, hunted, fished, and gathered here for centuries. Their leader, Massasoit, recognized that European arrival posed new threats, especially after devastating epidemics, brought by previous European expeditions, had drastically reduced their population. Still, Massasoit also saw potential advantages in forming strategic ties with the newcomers. Squanto, the crucial intermediary. At the heart of this unfolding story was Squanto, a Patuxet man with extraordinary experience in both cultures. Years earlier, he had been kidnapped by English traders, taken to Europe, and sold into slavery. After escaping to England and eventually making his way home, he found his village empty, his people wiped out by disease. Squanto's ability to speak English and navigate both worlds made him a vital mediator. He taught the Pilgrims how to plant corn, fertilize with fish, gather edible plants, catch fish and eel, and live off the land. His help changed everything. With his guidance, the Pilgrims were finally able to produce their own food. Squanto also supported a mutual protection treaty forged between Massasoit and the Pilgrims, an agreement aimed at preserving peace and helping both groups defend against possible threats. Although fragile, this alliance became the foundation for the events that followed. The first Thanksgiving. By the fall of 1621, the Pilgrims harvested their first successful crop. After a year marked by starvation and loss, the bounty felt miraculous. To celebrate and give thanks for their survival, and to honor the help they had received, they invited Massasoit and his men to join them for a feast. Historians place the event in late September or early October. Rather than a single meal, the gathering was more like a 3-day festival filled with food, diplomacy, and entertainment. It was a rare moment when two cultures with vastly different traditions came together to acknowledge their alliance. Who was there, and what did they eat? Only about 50 pilgrims remained by the time of the feast. Massasoit arrived with around 90 Wampanoag men, far more than the colonists expected. Though the numbers were imbalanced, the Pilgrims welcomed them, creating a gathering of around 140 people, the largest social event the colonists had experienced since arriving. The menu was very different from today's Thanksgiving dinners. With no sugar, ovens, or modern dishes, the meal was composed entirely of what the two groups could hunt, gather, or cultivate. The Wampanoag provided 5 deer. The Pilgrims likely contributed fish, shellfish such as clams and mussels, and possibly eels. Both groups may have eaten wild fowl, geese, ducks, or perhaps wild turkey, though there's no record confirming it. Vegetables like corn, beans, and squash were almost certainly present, along with nuts such as chestnuts and walnuts, and berries gathered from the surrounding forests. Although cranberries existed in the area, cranberry sauce did not. Sugar was a rare luxury the Pilgrims didn't have. Entertainment at the feast. The gathering wasn't solely about food. Historical accounts suggest a blend of shared activities. The Pilgrims demonstrated musket drills, part celebration, part subtle reminder of their defensive capabilities. The Wampanoag likely offered foot races, games, storytelling, and athletic contests, reflecting their cultural traditions. These activities helped the two groups interact as people rather than simply strategic allies. The dark side of the story. Although the feast is often remembered as a symbol of harmony, the truth is more nuanced. For the Pilgrims, the event was primarily a religious expression of gratitude and a celebration of survival. For the Wampanoag, sharing food was a cultural practice that reinforced relationships. Massasoit's decision to attend was both diplomatic and strategic. His people had already endured severe loss from epidemics brought by earlier Europeans. Forming an alliance with the Pilgrims was a way to increase security in an uncertain new world. But the peace was temporary. While the feast represented a fleeting moment of unity, the broader trajectory of colonial history tells a different story. As more Europeans arrived, indigenous communities faced escalating displacement, conflict, and oppression. Within a few decades, the fragile peace between the Pilgrims and the Wampanoag collapsed. Legacy: what happened after the feast? As the colonial population expanded, land disputes intensified. The descendants of the Pilgrims viewed the land as property to be claimed and developed, undermining relationships with indigenous peoples. These tensions ultimately erupted into King Philip's War, one of the deadliest conflicts in American history. From 1675 to 1678, thousands died, and the aftermath devastated native communities, reshaping the region permanently. In hindsight, the first Thanksgiving appears less as a defining moment of unity and more as a brief pause before decades of conflict. Still, the modern Thanksgiving holiday evolved through 19th century efforts to create a unifying national tradition. Writers like Sarah Josepha Hale promoted the idea of a shared, idealized feast. And during the Civil War, President Abraham Lincoln declared Thanksgiving a national holiday centered on gratitude and unity. The true history is far more complex. Thanksgiving's origins lie in a fleeting instance of cooperation between two very different societies, an event worth remembering, not for its mythic simplicity, but for the deeper lessons it reveals about resilience, cultural encounter, and the complicated legacy of early colonization. To learn even more about other interesting facts about history, subscribe to All Things History. If you enjoyed this video, tap the like button and subscribe for more history content just like this.